So this is a great question that just came up in Sync Academy, and the issue is if you're fairly new to sync licensing, but you're not new to producing music, you might have, dozens, maybe even like hundreds of tracks on your hard drive that you've produced over the years, and now the idea comes to you, well, rather than letting all these tracks sort of continue to collect dust on the hard drive, which they've already been doing, why don't I sort of go back to them, maybe rework them a bit, mix and master them, throw them to music libraries. That way I'm sort of ahead of the game here. I can kind of start off having dozens and dozens, maybe even hundreds of tracks going into my TV film performance royalties so that I can build up my passive income much quicker than having to build everything from scratch. So I'm going to talk in this video some of the considerations for why you may want to do that and maybe some reasons why you may not want to do that. So with this member, he was saying that he's going back to some of his old tracks, and some of it's working fairly okay, but a lot of it is giving him problems and headaches, and it's basically like trying to, fit a round peg into a square hole. Just some of the tracks that he composed years ago or even just months ago, they're not really tailored for licensing. They were more tailored for original music or for a rapper or for an artist or something else. And so he found that like he's just banging his head up against the wall, but he also feels really guilty that if he doesn't do something with this music, he's basically just forfeiting it to, the ether, to nothing. It's going to sit on his hard drive for the rest of his life, and it's never going to even potentially collect any money for him, okay? Which I understand. I can totally relate to having a lot of music that's been sitting on your hard drive, because I had quite a bit when I first got into sync licensing. However, when I got started in this business, I sort of learned very quickly that there are certain types of tracks that are going to get placed and quite a few tracks that are not going to get placed. So just because you have music doesn't mean that you have licensable music, and it certainly doesn't mean that you have music that is worthy of being placed in a particular production show. So my general guidelines for this kind of situation would be do what you can to work with your old material, okay? So go back through, if you've got dozens or hundreds of tracks, go through them, try to first whittle it down to which of these could I sort of group into a single album, right? 10 tracks, 12 tracks that are all in the same genre, sort of delivering kind of the same energy or mood, and sort of lend themselves to be marketed well together, as opposed to, hey, I did that one hip hop track, and I did a country track and a rock track and an orchestral trailer track. Let me just throw these all together into some hodgepodge potpourri, mixtape, and throw it to a library and see if they like any of it. Don't recommend that approach at all. What I do recommend is to see if you can kind of pick out the best of what you've got there and see if you can create a full album, right? So as you go through them, though, let's say you've got those 10 rock tracks, let's call it. As you're going through that, you might have to go through and add some elements, because maybe when you were producing those tracks, the first and second verses are identical because you were just thinking some singer was going to get on top of it. So you didn't think about adding forward momentum musically or instrumentally. But you will have to do that if you're going to put production music together. So you might have to add a new lead guitar to the second verse, or new percussion, or a new piano, or a synth, or whatever it is you're doing, right? Same thing with your choruses. If all three of your choruses are identical, you just copied and pasted them throughout the track. Might have worked for whatever you're doing before. It's not going to cut it for licensing. So if you can fairly quickly add a little bit more to that second chorus and a little bit more to the third, so that it just feels like the track is constantly building and evolving, and you're providing all these different options throughout the different parts of your track, then great. Like, you're definitely going to save a lot of time, because these are small little things you can do to sort of polish them up and get them ready. And of course, hopefully whenever you made these tracks, your probably mixing and mastering skills have gotten better. So you might want to revisit that. Definitely take a look at the tutorials in Sync Academy if you're a member, because we talk about some really quick, easy ways to ensure your tracks are louder, more stereo spread, more dynamic, less muddy, cutting out a lot of those low end frequencies that can muddy up your tracks and cause that distortion. So might be worth, obviously, I wouldn't say might, it definitely is worth going back into your mixing and mastering and seeing if you could just kind of clean things up just a little bit better than you had when you first made the track. So give that a shot first. If you find, though, I think like this member was saying, if you find that going through that causes more headaches, more problems, more confusion, makes you feel like you're basically rewriting the entire track, and you can't really get back and feeling that magic of the original spark, when you first wrote that track years ago or something, and it's just not feeling right anymore because it feels stale or whatever. If you find yourself constantly just trust your feelings on that. If you feel frustrated, you don't feel like you're making progress doing that, it's going to hurt, but it is the best thing to do, to just put those tracks away and move forward with new material. Now, What you could do, this could be sort of your, conciliary, thinking about doing something with those tracks rather than just having them sit in your hard drive. Maybe polish them up a bit to the best of your ability, but don't, kill yourself over it. Don't stress yourself too much over it, and try to throw them into a royalty-free, maybe a music library online that you can just throw stuff up. It's not really a hard library to get into. You're not going to be seeing probably a lot of income, but at least you could say, hey, a couple $100 here and there, maybe I'll get from all this music, rather than it being a 0% chance and it's just literally sitting on my hard drive doing nobody any good. That might be one way to just have some sort of like a third place prize where you can just throw it out there and get something for the work you've done with it. But many times the more mature professional response has to be that you say, you know what? I created this music before I knew about the TV film world, before I knew about how to do this stuff, before I really understood, had these skills. I'm much better now. I'm much more equipped. I have better samplers, better plugins, better monitoring instruments, better MIDI keyboard. I'm at a different level now than when I created these tracks. And I feel like if I want to really have the best shot at creating licensable music to get the most amount of placements, then maybe I need to take the professional, make the hard choice here, and just start fresh and create new original content from the ground up. That's what I recommended for this member, because it sounds like he's getting really frustrated. And he also was saying that the date that he was complete this album was in 2023, which is over a year away. If you guys are not familiar with this or not aware, taking a year to complete an album will never land you in significant income in this industry. You might make some money here and there, but if you're taking a full year or more than a year to get an album done to pitch to a library, first of all, you're not going to be consistent enough, sending new material to a library for them to even consider you a serious player. You're going to be this kind of like outsider that once in a while throws them something, but you're not going to be really considered for a lot of opportunities, because you're going to just be seen as a sort of, an occasional, amateur outsider just dipping in once in a while to throw some music at them, right? So you need to be shooting for, at least an album a month. That's really where you should be going. And some of you might feel that that's impossible because you've never produced that fast. And you look at other artists and you're like, well, artists only release maybe at best one album per year. So how am I going to do this every single month? Well, if you're doing stuff like how I do things, which is primarily mostly instrumental, and you have your own home studio, well, the reason why artists take so long is you got like 4 or 5 different people that have to get together to write it, to agree on it. Then you got to get the studio booked, you got to mix it, you got to engineer it, you got to master it. A lot of decisions have to be made. You got to record the vocals. That takes forever. There's a lot more, and the artwork and the marketing, there's a lot more that goes on with artists when they're putting together an album. You and I, we just have to do the music. That's it. And for the most part, we control 100% of that process, because we are the composer, we're the producer, we're the mixer, and we're the master. And you absolutely can be all of those things. And then you're shipping it off to the library that you work with. So you should be thinking about that should be a regular timeline for you. It's the end of the month. I should have 10 tracks done, maybe 12 tracks. I should have a full album ready to go and shipped off to the library that I'm partnered with, or that I'm going to be partnered with. So you should be shooting for that. So you got to make this choice for yourself. I always, again, my thing is always just trust how you're feeling about it. If you're feeling excited and motivated, and you get this sense of like, wow, like I have 50 tracks that are definitely licensable, and I just got to do a little bit of extra work and I can throw them out there and do well. I've heard of producers, and I know many of my students have been able to do that and basically salvage something that they were working on before and push it into a new medium and do really, really well. I've also heard just as many stories of producers who started that process and 6 months into it realized it was the wrong thing to do. They wasted 6 months. They don't want to pitch any of the music because they're now just coming to their senses and realizing this all sucks. Like, this is all garbage. I'm better than this. I don't want to start my career off sending this kind of music to them. And in the meantime, they wasted 6 months not creating brand new original content. So make that choice for yourself. If you do want to start fresh, then Sync Academy and the tutorials that are in there are where you're going to get your best shot in this business, knowing basically from day one how to avoid the common mistakes that most producers make. That, trust me, you might think, oh, I've been producing for 5 years, 10 years. I'm not going to make those mistakes. Yes, you will, because the TV film music licensing business is very unique. There are specific little golden rules, little things you got to know about how to make sure you're creating licensable music. You might make great, awesome sounding, cool music, but if it's not useful and marketed directly towards this side of the business, it will either get rejected by libraries or maybe accepted but sit on their shelf and not get you any placements. So You just think about this. You spend way too much time and effort and energy into your music for you to be making these kind of ridiculous mistakes and errors that you don't have to make, that I made in the beginning of my career many times over and over and over again, till I finally started like realizing what I was doing wrong. And it took me a while to kind of figure that out. But with Sync Academy, from day one, you don't have to make any of those mistakes. You don't have to trial and error your way through this business for years and years and years to figure out what works or what doesn't. From day one, you'll know what will get you the highest chances of getting those placements. So that's what all those tutorials and that community is all about. And of course, the feedback corner. Many of you guys are members and you don't even take advantage of this. So you should be, once a week is what we ask for. So not to spam the feed with tons and tons of your material, but like every week, come in, post a track you've been working on for the community to give some feedback and comments on, so that you can see, hey, yeah, I didn't notice that. And I see a lot of this really productive commenting going back and forth between members of people having their eyes open to maybe some weaknesses, some areas of weaknesses where they can improve upon their tracks, mixing, producing, mastering, whatever it might be, right? So these are the things where we don't always know what our blind spots are until we have others point them out for us and show us maybe some things we can improve upon. Doesn't mean their word is the golden rule and they're always right and we're always, our opinion is always wrong. But, it's always good to sort of second guess and check yourself once in a while and get some real feedback from a community of people who are just as plugged into this world as you are. So I hope you are taking advantage of that in Sync Academy. So that's what I have to share for you guys on this topic. If you have any more comments, questions, concerns about making this choice, please comment below and I'll be happy to answer.